When you start realizing that so much of what bothers you comes from things completely out of your control, something shifts. Think about it. Every single day, there are people around you making choices, saying words, showing attitudes, and none of that belongs to you. Yet we carry it, we stress over it, and we let it dictate our mood. The first behavior that makes you truly unbothered is learning to control the controllables and release everything else. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're wise enough to know where your energy actually makes a difference. If someone cuts you off in traffic, you can't control that. You can't jump into their car and fix their driving. You can't make them polite. You can't force them to change. The only thing in your hands is whether you slam the horn, carry that anger all the way home, and ruin your evening, or whether you take a deep breath and keep moving. That's control of the controllables. The temptation is to keep our attention wrapped around what people should have done, what they could have said differently, how they should have acted, but the truth is they didn't, and you can't change that. What you can change is your response. That's the difference between living constantly irritated or walking through life calm and steady. Think about relationships. You can't control how someone treats you, but you can control whether you stay, whether you set boundaries, or whether you adjust your expectations. The stress comes when we blur that line and try to control what was never ours to begin with. You start thinking, if I say the right thing, if I do it perfectly, if I prove myself enough, then maybe they'll behave differently. That's wasted energy. You can't manage another adult's actions. You can only manage your own choices, and that's where the freedom comes from. When you own what's yours and release what's not, you stop getting hooked by every little thing. People will still gossip, they'll still criticize, they'll still make decisions you don't like, but suddenly you're not carrying it anymore. You're not waking up at 2 a.m. replaying the argument in your head because you've trained yourself to separate it. That's their choice. This is my choice. That's their behavior. This is my behavior. And you start to see how much calmer your life becomes when you stop reaching into places you don't control. Even at work, you can't control the boss's mood or the coworker who complains about everything. You can't force the company to change policies overnight, but you can control how you show up, the effort you put in, the attitude you carry, the way you take care of yourself after hours. That's power. Most people think power is about controlling others. Real power is about self-control. It's about saying, I don't need everything outside of me to line up perfectly in order for me to feel steady inside. It takes practice because your mind is always going to want to latch on to things outside your control. It will want to replay conversations, predict outcomes, and obsess over other people's choices. That's natural. But when you catch it, when you tell yourself this part isn't mine, my job is only here, you start rewiring the way you think. Slowly, you build a habit of focusing only where your effort matters. That's how you keep your energy from being drained by things you were never meant to carry. And when people try to get a reaction out of you, when they push your buttons, when they bring drama, suddenly it doesn't work anymore. Not because you're numb, but because you're clear. You know what belongs to you and what doesn't. You control the controllables, and everything else is background noise. That's how you start becoming unbothered in a world that's always trying to get under your skin. Respond, don't react. That's one of the most powerful behaviors you can ever learn if you want to be unbothered, because the truth is, most of us are running on autopilot. Someone says something offensive, we snap back. Someone gives us attitude, we match it with attitude. Someone pushes us, we push harder. That's reacting. It's instant, it's emotional, and it always leaves us feeling like we gave away our control. Responding, on the other hand, is intentional. It means you pause, you process, and then you decide what to do. And in that pause, that's where your power lives. When you react, you're letting the other person's behavior dictate your next move. You're basically saying, you control my emotions, you control my tone, you control my peace. And that's exactly why you end up so frustrated afterwards. Because deep down, you know you didn't choose it, you just let the moment pull you in. But when you respond, you flip the script. You tell yourself, I'll choose how I handle this, not them. That's why people who respond instead of react always look calmer, always seem harder to shake, because they're not handing over the steering wheel of their emotions. Think about the last time you reacted quickly out of anger. Maybe someone insulted you, maybe a coworker said something that rubbed you the wrong way, maybe your partner made a comment that cut deep. You fired back, you said something sharp, and for a second you felt justified. But later, when the heat died down, you probably thought, I shouldn't have said that. I wish I'd handled that differently. That's the cost of reacting. It feels good in the moment, but it rarely serves you in the long run. Responding, though, often doesn't give you that quick rush, but it pays off later because you walk away knowing you stayed in control. Responding doesn't mean staying quiet all the time or pretending you're unaffected. It means you decide what tone, what words, what timing is best for you. Sometimes that's saying nothing at all. Sometimes that's calmly setting a boundary. Sometimes it's choosing humor instead of hostility. But the key is that it's yours. You're not just bouncing off their energy like a ping pong ball, you're grounded in your own. That's what makes you unbothered, because now no one can pull you into their chaos without your permission. Or it's easy to say just respond, don't react, but it takes practice to live it. It starts with awareness. You notice that moment when your body tenses, when your heart rate spikes, when your mind starts racing. That's usually the trigger that you're about to react. And instead of letting it spill out, you take a breath. Sometimes just a single second is enough. That 1 second between stimulus and response is where you build your strength. It doesn't sound like much, but it can change everything about how you handle people and situations. Over time, you realize that responding gives you more options. Reacting usually has one direction, it's all or nothing, it's immediate and heated. Responding gives you choices. You can decide if this is even worth your energy. You can decide if silence will say more than words. You can decide if calm firmness will get you further than anger. And those decisions are what shape your reputation, your relationships, and your peace of mind. People stop seeing you as easy to provoke because no matter what they throw at you, you're not taking the bait. And here's the thing, when you train yourself to respond instead of react, you don't just protect your peace, you also end up influencing people around you because your calmness becomes disarming. When someone comes at you expecting a fight and they don't get it, they lose their grip. Your steady energy forces them to either back down or rethink their approach. That's how responding not only keeps you unbothered, but also shifts the entire atmosphere of your interactions. It's strength without shouting, power without force, and confidence without chaos. Mastering the pause before you speak is one of those simple behaviors that looks small on the surface, but changes everything about how you come across. Most people don't pause. They jump right in, they let words spill out without thinking, and then they spend hours replaying what they should have said differently. The pause is powerful because it gives you room to think, it gives you room to choose, and it shows the other person that you are in control of yourself, not running on impulse. When you pause, you take back ownership of the conversation. It's like hitting the brakes before a car spins out of control. That moment of silence might feel uncomfortable at first, but it's the exact moment where you separate yourself from reacting emotionally and instead step into responding intentionally. People who pause before they speak carry a presence about them. They're not rushed, they're not flustered, and they're not easy to manipulate because they're not just giving away their words freely. They've trained themselves to slow down. In an argument, the pause can be the difference between escalation and resolution. Someone might throw something sharp at you, expecting you to snap back instantly, but when you pause, you disrupt that cycle. You don't give them what they're looking for. Instead, you show that you're calm enough to think it through. That silence often makes the other person more uncomfortable than anything you could say, because it signals that you're not playing the same emotional game. You're on a different level, one that's grounded and steady. Even outside of conflict, the pause matters. In everyday conversations, it makes you a better communicator. It makes your words land heavier because people notice when you take a breath and then speak. It feels more deliberate, more intentional, and it carries weight. People lean in because they sense you're not just filling space. You're saying something you mean. That's how leaders talk. That's how people who command respect talk. They don't rush to fill every silence. They use silence as part of their communication. The pause also protects you from regret. How many times have you said something too quickly and wished you could pull it back? That usually happens when you don't pause. Words spoken in heat, in sarcasm, in frustration tend to stick around longer than we'd like. But words chosen carefully after a pause carry far less cleanup. You start to notice that you're not apologizing as much, not backtracking as much, because you're giving yourself that moment to filter and decide. That one small habit saves you from countless unnecessary conflicts and misunderstandings. It takes discipline because the urge to fill silence is strong. We think if we don't answer right away, we'll look weak or unsure. But the truth is the opposite. Pausing makes you look strong because only someone in control can sit with silence and not panic. It makes you look confident because you're not scrambling for approval through rushed words. And over time, you'll see that mastering the pause makes you unbothered because you're no longer at the mercy of every quick emotion or every provoking comment. You've built in a safeguard, a buffer, and that buffer keeps your peace intact. Protecting your boundaries without apology is one of the clearest signs that you are unbothered, because it means you no longer live to please everyone else at the cost of yourself. Boundaries are not about being cold or shutting people out. They are about knowing where you end and where someone else begins. They are about understanding your limits and making sure you do not burn yourself out trying to meet demands that are not yours to carry. When you learn to protect your boundaries without feeling guilty, you step into a kind of strength that most people never find because you stop trading your peace for temporary approval. A lot of people struggle with boundaries because they think setting them makes them selfish. They worry about disappointing others, so they keep saying yes, they keep overextending, and they keep pushing themselves past their limits. But the truth is, when you constantly give in and ignore your own limits, resentment builds. You end up drained, bitter, and exhausted, and that usually shows up in your relationships anyway. Protecting your boundaries is not selfish, it is necessary. It is the only way you can give people the best version of yourself instead of a resentful, half-empty one. Boundaries look different for everyone. For some, it's protecting their time. For others, it's protecting their emotional space. And for some, it's protecting their energy from toxic people. Whatever it is, the key is to state it clearly and stick to it. The hard part is that people will often test your boundaries. They will push back. They will guilt trip. They will try to convince you that you are wrong for drawing the line. That is why the word without apology matters. If you keep defending, justifying, or over-explaining, you are telling them that your boundary is up for debate. But when you calmly hold your ground without feeling the need to apologize, you send the message that this is non-negotiable. Boundaries also work both ways. They teach others how to treat you, but they also train you to respect yourself. Every time you enforce a boundary, you remind yourself that your time, your energy, and your peace have value, and the more you practice it, the easier it gets. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. You might feel the pull of guilt or the fear of rejection, but over time, you realize that the people who truly respect you will adjust. The ones who can't handle your boundaries are often the same ones who benefited from you not having any. And here is the real beauty of boundaries. They filter out noise. They cut down drama. They cut down manipulation. They cut down the feeling that you are constantly being pulled in every direction. Instead of reacting to every request, every comment, every demand, you have a structure. You know what you will allow and what you will not, and that clarity makes you unbothered. It frees you from living on other people's terms, because you are no longer bending and breaking just to keep the peace. You have found peace in protecting yourself, and that peace is stronger than anything someone else can try to take from you. Detaching your worth from people's opinions is one of the most liberating behaviors you can practice if you want to be unbothered. So much of what weighs people down is the constant need for validation, the fear of being judged, and the endless measuring of self-worth against what others think. The truth is, no matter what you do, people will always have something to say. Some will praise you, others will criticize you, and some will twist your actions into something they were never meant to be. If your worth rises and falls with those opinions, you will always live on shaky ground. But when you separate who you are from what people say, you stop giving them that kind of control. The problem starts when we grow up attaching our value to external approval. From grades in school to likes on social media to compliments from friends, we are taught that our worth is something outside of us waiting to be confirmed. But the reality is, people's opinions are just reflections of their own perspectives, their own biases, and their own moods. They are not an accurate measure of your value. The same action can make one person love you and another person dislike you, and that alone proves that worth cannot be built on something so unstable. When you detach, you stop chasing validation. That does not mean you stop caring about growth or feedback. It means you stop using it as the foundation of your identity. You can hear criticism without crumbling. You can receive praise without becoming dependent on it. And you can walk into a room knowing who you are, regardless of how people respond. That kind of stability makes you unbothered because you are no longer waiting for permission to feel valuable. Detaching your worth also changes the way you handle conflict. If someone insults you or tries to belittle you, it does not sting in the same way because you no longer see their words as proof of who you are. You see them as a reflection of who they are. Instead of thinking, maybe they are right, maybe I am not good enough, you start thinking, this says more about them than it does about me. That shift keeps you calm in situations where you used to feel crushed because their opinion no longer carries weight over your identity. It also makes you more authentic. When your worth is tied to opinions, you bend yourself into shapes to please everyone. You hide parts of yourself, you change your behavior, you suppress your truth, all so people will like you. But when you detach, you stop performing. You start showing up as yourself because you know your value is not on trial every time someone looks at you. Ironically, that authenticity often draws people in even more because confidence is magnetic. But even if it does not, you are still steady because you are not depending on it to define you. Living this way takes intention because the pull to seek approval will always be there. But every time you remind yourself that your worth is not something people hand you, you build a stronger foundation. You start walking lighter, speaking freer, and carrying yourself with a quiet confidence that cannot be shaken by criticism or inflated by praise. That is how detaching your worth from people's opinions makes you truly unbothered. Because you no longer live as a reflection of others, you live from a truth that is already yours. Choosing peace over being right is one of the most underrated but powerful behaviors that keep you unbothered. Most conflicts drag on not because the issue is so big, but because both people are locked into proving their point. The need to win, to have the last word, to prove you are smarter or stronger, that is what keeps you stuck in cycles of frustration. When you shift your focus from being right to keeping your peace, you realize that not every battle is worth fighting and not every comment is worth responding to. So often, people feel attacked and instantly want to defend themselves with facts, explanations, or comebacks. The problem is, even when you are right, that doesn't always create resolution. Many times, it just creates more tension because the other person is not listening to understand. They are listening to defend their own side. By insisting on being right, you get pulled into a tug of war where no one actually wins. But when you prioritize peace, you learn to let go of the tug. You realize that silence or walking away can be far stronger than proving a point that will not be heard anyway. Choosing peace is not about weakness or avoiding hard conversations. It is about wisdom. It is about recognizing when a discussion is productive and when it is just ego against ego. Some arguments are not worth the stress they cost you, and some people are not ready to hear the truth no matter how clearly you say it. Peace means valuing your mental and emotional energy more than the satisfaction of proving someone wrong. It is not that truth doesn't matter, it is that your well being matters more.